This is a 2015 McLaren 650S Spider, finished in beautiful Aurora blue. I've borrowed it from Exclusive Automotive Group, the Bentley and Aston Martin dealer here in the Washington, D.C. area, and they have it listed for sale for $214,888, just under $215,000, and that makes it the bargain of the modern exotic car world. Now, you might be thinking, how is it possible that a car that costs over $200,000 could be a bargain? Well, bear with me and I'll explain. But before I explain, I want to talk about how confusing the McLaren road car lineup is. Now, back in 2011, they came out with their first road car in years, and they called it the MP412C. MP412C, it sounds like the name of an off-brand DVD player. When it came time to replace the MP412C, they came out with this, the 650S. Fine. Then they came out with an entry-level model called the 570S. That was also fine, except for the entry-level 570S was actually larger than the 650S, and it used the same engine, which was a little bit strange. Then they came out with a supercar, and I figured, all right, well, they got the 570S, the 650S, I call the supercar the 950S. Instead, they called it the P1. Apparently, that was a tribute to the old McLaren F1, but I don't know why they chose P1. It could have been R1 or G1 or maybe L1. Anyway, then they came out with a performance version of this car, and they decided to call it the 675 LT. Now, the number refers to basically the power output of the car, but what does LT stand for? I have absolutely no idea, although I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of emails informing me. Regardless, it was all very confusing. Anyway, if you add up all of the names from those 5 cars, you have 13 numbers and 8 letters, all organized with approximately the logic of airplane crash debris. To make matters even more confusing, every single model I just named uses the same engine. Seriously, everything from a 2011 MP412C to a brand new 570S to the P1 supercar, they all use the same 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8 in varying states of tune. And then there's the styling. They all look about the same. Here's a McLaren, and 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 I bet you can't tell them all apart with a quick glance unless you're one of those 17-year-old kids who runs around Pebble Beach during Car Week with a backpack full of 47 pounds of DSLR camera lenses. I say all this because it helps drive home my point that the 650S is the best deal among modern exotic cars. You see, I think the kind of people who buy Ferrari and Lamborghini, they don't really get McLaren. They don't understand the confusing naming, they don't get why all the cars look about the same, and they don't really like the whole one-engine-fits-all concept. So they've kind of stayed away, and as a result, this car has lost a lot more value than its rivals. For example, this one is listed for about $215,000. The average asking price on AutoTrader for a 2015 Ferrari 458 Spider is $265,000. Now, the Lamborghini Huracan Spider didn't come out till 2016, but the average asking price for one of those on AutoTrader is about $260,000. And yet, the 650S has the performance to match those cars. This has 641 horsepower to the Ferrari 458's 570 and the Lamborghini Huracan's 602. The McLaren does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds to the 458's 3.3 and the Huracan's 3.0. In other words, it has the performance, but for 25% less price. It also has a lot of unusual quirks and features, and of course I'm going to show them to you today, and then I'm going to get it out on the road and tell you how this thing drives, and then I'm going to give it a Doug score. And for more of my thoughts on the 650S, click the link below to go to autotrader.com/oversteer, where I've written a column about it, and I've also compiled a list of cars currently for sale on AutoTrader that also offer Ferrari and Lamborghini performance without the price. Now, I've already shown you some of the cool quirks and features of the 650S in the review I already did of the McLaren 570S. I've got a link to that review in the description below, and I'm also going to go back over a couple of those features a little bit later. But right now I'm going to start by showing you the unique quirks and features of just the 650S, starting with the McLaren logo in the door sill. You can see it down there. The door sill is really hard to climb over, partially because of the angle at which the door opens and also because it's just big, but at least the McLaren logo is there to make you feel better about what you're climbing into. Now, one of the most interesting things about the 650S Spider is that it is, in fact, a Spider or a convertible, and so you probably want to see how the roof opens. Well, it's actually pretty simple. Push a little button in the center console, and But the most interesting thing about the top being down isn't the top being down. Instead, it's this window. Now you can have this window up if you want to use it as a wind deflector, or push a little button in the center console and check this out. The window rolls down. You don't have to put in any finicky plastic wind deflector. Instead, you have a power window back here. And the other cool thing is you can put this window up or down regardless of whether you have the top up or down. So you can have the top up and you can have this window down and the side windows down to create a breeze on a hot day where you might not want to put the top down. And since there's a contingent of you who I know enjoys watching roofs go up and down, here you go. Enjoy watching it go up. But I still haven't gotten to the most interesting thing the roof does when it's in its up position. That would be controlled right here. There are a couple of buttons located in the door jamb of the 650S that say tonneau. That describes this thing. It's the tonneau cover, and these buttons have arrows up and down on them. So what's interesting about those buttons? Well, you press it and watch this. The tonneau cover opens right up, which gives you an extra storage compartment for you to put stuff. Now, when you go to open the roof, the car actually asks you to confirm that there is nothing inside the tonneau storage area, because that's where the roof sits when it's down. But when you have it up, you can stick stuff in there if you don't have enough room in the trunk or in the passenger seat. But the 650S has a couple of interesting quirks beyond its roof. For example, the backup camera. Yes, this car has a backup camera, just like your CR-V. All cars pretty much do now because of federal law, but this one is particularly interesting. Now, the center screen in this car is arrayed vertically, but the backup camera is horizontal. So when you put the car in reverse and turn on the backup camera, there's a lot of black space, almost like someone has filmed a vertical video and uploaded it to YouTube, and there's all that empty space on the side. It's kind of odd. I'm not sure why they didn't just make the backup camera vertical like the screen. Another interesting thing is the key. Now, the key itself is really cool. It's this thin little piece, and it has a cool shape to it, and it has these little buttons on it that aren't really buttons, blah, blah, blah. It's a cool key for a cool car, no surprise, but the funny part is what happens when you pull the actual blade key out in case your battery dies. Take a look at this thing. It's the smallest blade key I've ever seen in my life. It's like a stubby little half key. I can't believe that's the key to this car. Another interesting thing in the interior is the cup holders. Now, if you look in here, you can see that the center controls are sort of pulled out in position so the driver and passenger can easily access them. And that means there's no place for a cup holder in the middle. Instead, McLaren has hidden it behind the center controls under the dashboard. It's kind of an interesting spot for it. No one will ever know your cups are there if you drive a 650S. Another interesting quirk in this car is the seat controls. Now, McLaren didn't have room to put them on the side of the seat like in most other cars, and they decided not to put them on the door for whatever reason. So instead, they're in front of you. You can't see them, and they don't mimic the shape of a seat. Instead, you move it up and down to move the seat forward. It's kind of weird. The memory controls are pointed towards you, and the heated seat control is also located down there. Just a little button you can tap to turn on the heated seat. It's kind of strange. Not a most intuitive place to look for seat controls. Another interesting 650S quirk is the door-mounted climate controls. Yes, that's right. They didn't have enough room in the center console to put the climate controls, so they're on the door, the driver's door and the passenger door, to control the driver's side and the passenger side. Now, the driver has a few more options. The defroster, they can change where it's coming out, but both sides have the ability to change the temperature and the amount of air that comes out. Both sides also get to see exactly what temperature air it is in tiny little screens mounted on the doors. The interesting thing about those screens is they're mounted at the exact right angle to kind of wash out in direct sunlight, and I've heard they're very expensive to replace. Next up, moving up to the front, the 650S has a rather large trunk up here, and hidden inside a net sized perfectly for it, a leather owner's manual pouch with a nice zipper. Inside the owner's manual pouch, which by the way is trimmed in orange just like the interior, you have a hardback owner's manual, only the finest for McLaren owners who need to figure out how their buttons and switches work. A couple other cool things around back in the 650S. Number one, the center exhaust. I've always found those really cool. McLaren has those in a few cars, and I think they just look awesome. They make the sound a lot better, especially in the convertible, and they're just cooler than exhaust coming out of the normal place. The other cool thing back here is the strakes in the back all look like normal plastic black things until you brake or put on the turn signal, and then the hidden brake lights and turn signals come on and reveal themselves. That is also kind of a cool look. You also might be wondering how to get inside the 650S since there's no visible door handle. Well, fortunately, McLaren hasn't kept that stupid magic door handle thing from the MP412C where you just slide your hand under and hope it opens. Instead, you slide your hand under, but there's a little button down here. You push it, and the door pops right open. And then you are left to try to enter the car as gracefully as you possibly can. Not bad. And then, of course, there's another cool feature of the 650S, and that would be how it sounds. And then there are all the interesting quirks and features shared with the 570S that I already reviewed, like, for example, the fact that there's no big hood in this car to reveal the engine. Instead, this is all you get. I also like how the turn signals and running lights are shaped like the McLaren logo, which is a neat little detail. There's the infotainment system in the center, which is surprisingly well equipped with navigation and a bunch of other stuff. It's controlled entirely by the all-powerful center button with, I don't know, is that a Pepsi logo? I still love the mirror adjuster hidden behind the steering wheel, which not only lets you adjust the mirrors, but for some reason also turns on and off the parking sensors. In the middle, there are cool drive mode buttons that require you to press active before you use them to confirm that you're really ready. There's the unusual shifter where you press the buttons to get into drive and reverse, and if you want to park the car, you push N for neutral and pull the parking brake. I like the cool stalk for the turn signals that oddly has a hole in it. Feels really nice and sturdy to use, and the wiper stalk is roughly the same design. I also like the gauge cluster, which is configurable on the left, and you can scroll through a lot of different menus and screens using a little stalk that's mounted on the left of the steering column below the turn signals. To get out of the 650S, there isn't a traditional door handle. Instead, you pull up on this thing and push, and the door opens. And since that's electronic, if you need to get out and the battery is dead, there's a little strap next to the seat that lets you manually release the door. So those are all the 650S's weird quirks and its cool features. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see what it's like to drive a bargain $215,000 exotic car. This car is so exotic and crazy looking, and it feels so exotic on the inside because everything is kind of weird. As I've just shown you all the quirks and the weird stuff, everything's a little different. Well, I'm stuck doing this. Telling me I'm going over the speed limit. Well, that's useful. Thank you very much. One of the things I love about convertible exotic cars and sports cars is just how much you can hear the engine. Everybody always says, well, but it's not as rigid as a coupe on the track. Well, screw that. I don't drive on the track. I drive around town, and around town, I can hear it so much more. But I'll tell you, when you want a real sports car, something that really goes, there's no substitute. You will not feel satisfied with an Aston Martin or anything like that. You need the best, and this is among the best. Whew. Sound is so good. And it is quick. It is very quick. I love the look of the tachometer. It's really attractive. Cars that just makes you feel like a total superstar. You can go any speed you want, and then you start to understand why some of these cars are involved in such crazy high-speed crashes, you know, where they split in pieces. It's because the car just makes you feel so confident. You go around that corner really fast, and then that corner a little faster, and a little faster, and then one day it's not quite enough. But that's what this car does. It just gives you the confidence to be able to do that. And it sounds amazing, and in this car, more than a lot of the other turbos that I've driven, it really comes on like a traditional turbo where it's like not much, and then bam! But most people would probably say that it's better for racing, for normal driving, to have it be more linear. The ride quality obviously is rough. I mean, I can feel, not only can I feel the little lane marker bumps, but I can feel the lane lines. Just that little bit of paint you can feel when you go over it. I mean, it is rough. I can't believe it's telling me I'm going over the speed limit. Shut up. I will say, you know, I drove the 570S McLaren also. That's an amazing car too. The people who are really into the numbers, the horsepower, etc., you know, this is the one they want because it's more powerful. But maybe the 570S is the real bargain here. All right, I'm gonna floor it here. I mean, the fastest roller coaster you'll ever be on is a McLaren 650S. Sitting here in a stoplight, they do a pretty good job of mitigating the bumpiness. Like, it's not too rumbly, but it is more than in a lot of these exotic cars that I drive. This car is definitely more of like a true crazy sports car exotic, and it's less of a luxury exotic like the R8. The R8 is a lot more composed at the stoplights. This thing feels like, come on, let's go. What are you doing? Why are you stopped? I'll tell you, on a curvy back road, wooded like this is a car. If I could drive this thing around and not have to deal with the gas station comments, want to trade, how much did it cost, where do you work, it would be hard to say no to a car like this. especially with the top down and that sound. Oh, that sound. So that's the McLaren 650S. Personally, I don't like the look-alike styling of all the McLaren models, or the confusing names, or the fact that they seem content following the General Motors model of putting a 3.8-liter engine in every single vehicle they sell. But I love the sound, I love the performance, I really like all the weird quirks in the features, and I really like the pricing, especially compared to rivals. And now it's time for the Doug score. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the 650S is a very nice looking car, but beauty isn't the only thing that makes a car successful here, and the 650S has a glaring issue, namely, it looks like a lot of the other McLaren models, and for that it gets a little demerit and it only scores a 7 out of 10. Acceleration, the 650S does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, giving it a perfect score, 10 out of 10. Handling is sharp, not among the very, very best, but certainly among the very best, and it gets a 9 out of 10. Cool factor is strong. Between the looks and the sound and the styling, this is clearly one of the coolest cars on the market, and it earns an 8 out of 10. Finally, importance. This is an important car in the sense that it's a special, cool, exotic, but it's not distinctive enough from the other McLarens to really carve out its own niche in the supercar world, and it gets a 7 out of 10. That brings the total weekend score to 41 out of 50, which is strong. It's really high up in the ranks. Moving on to the daily categories, starting with features, the 650S is well equipped with everything you need and some neat stuff you just think is cool, but it lacks some of the latest tech and it earns a 7 out of 10. Next up is comfort. The 650S isn't insanely punishing, but it's also not exactly soft. It's harsher than most sports cars and it earns a 4 out of 10. As for quality, the interior materials are good and everything feels solid, but 650S reliability is still a question mark, and for that it earns only a 6 out of 10. For practicality, it has 7 cubic feet of cargo volume, which is pretty good. That extra space under the tonneau cover helps, but not enough to raise the score from a 3 out of 10. Finally, there's value. The 650S is excellent for its class, given its low pricing compared to rivals, but it stops short of an ultra-high score by dependability and depreciation. Dependability is still a question mark, and as for depreciation, it may be cheaper than other exotics, but it's still got a lot of value to lose, giving it a 7 out of 10 in this category. And that brings the total daily score to 27 out of 50, placing it right in the range of its rivals. Added up, and the total Doug score is 68 out of 100, which is really good, just a few points shy of the best I've tested. But that isn't the interesting bit. The interesting bit is that now I've tested the 488, the Huracan, the R8 V10 Plus, and the 650S, all the latest exotics. And even though I'm calling the 650S a bargain, it scores dead last. Check the scores closely, and it's easy to see why. In the weekend categories, it's up there with the others, but its derivative styling prevents it from taking the lead. In the daily categories, it's 2 points behind on quality because of reliability, and stronger reliability would also increase the value score too. But if you like the styling and you aren't worried about reliability, maybe you won't own it that long, this car hangs with or exceeds the very best exotics on the market today from some very established companies. A Spider or a convertible, and so that means you probably want to see how the roof opens. So here goes. Push a little button in the center console and